And we have with us Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, former senior diplomat. Welcome, sir, to DD India News Hour. First of all, what has provided this very solid base for the long-standing India-Japan cooperation in various fields?
Well, India and Japan share a very unique and special partnership, which goes back a very, very long way. But what we have seen is that ever since we established a strategic partnership, it has grown in leaps and bounds, and it has gone across different sectors, which makes it very vibrant and future-oriented. Way back in about 10 years ago, we had established the global partnership of the strategic partnership. And that global dimension gave India and Japan the ability to work on a lot of areas which were beyond our own countries. Today, I understand we shall be extending it to the next vision statement for the next 10 years. So our relationship has been always based on mutual interest, trying to advance our cooperation in all areas, having a very strong economic, scientific orientation, very, very good political understanding, of course, and being responsive to the concerns and of the world and the regions around us. And finally, since it is future-oriented, it always has hope.
Yes, indeed. So Prime Minister Narendra Modi said in his address after the annual summit that India-Japan partnership is rooted in mutual trust. Your comments on that statement?
This has been from the very beginning. You would recall that in the past, we've had many of our old leaders, Netaji included, who had gone to Japan and had sought assistance for our freedom movement and had collaborated. And he led the Indian National Army. There's a strong contingent and support. But I wanted to highlight this because the cooperation actually permeates across different sectors in all walks of life in Japan. You will find a very strong and warm sentiment for India. And that's because of the very strong foundation that was laid by Netaji, by Tagore, and many others in the past. But in today's time, what we find is that as we are in a kind of geopolitical flux, where so much is changing around us and geoeconomics is changing, we find the complementarity of relations. We are the fourth and fifth largest economies globally. We are today the largest and the fastest growing economy. Japan is a huge powerhouse of technology. And I think together we lend stability to the Indo-Pacific. So I think in all this, if you put it all together, you have a natural complementarity and a partnership.
Okay, so during the India-Japan Economic Forum, Prime Minister Modi said India is a springboard for Japanese businesses to the global south, and together we can work for the stability. He said we will shape the Asian century for stability, growth and prosperity. Could you elaborate this?
You know, Japan has always believed that it needs to expand its industrial structure, its technology overseas so that it can collaborate with viable, reliant, resilient partners. And you would recall that in the past, Southeast Asia, there were countries there that Japan collaborated with. Then there were huge investments in China. But today, the largest by scale, as Prime Minister Modi said, in terms of opportunity, in terms of the growth rate that our economy has, India is the most vibrant opportunity for any country. And of course, Japan realizes that. About a decade ago, the Japanese industry had realized that there was great potential, and you saw how many of these big industrial investments came into India, whether it was in the infrastructure sector or automotives. Today, we are looking at a new range, which are actually, so to say, the new technology areas, whether it is semiconductors, AI, robotics, automotive engineering, and so on, green hydrogen. And in all this, you will find that the Japanese are actually global leaders in terms of the technologies that they have developed. And they're looking for a very viable and reliable partner with whom they can work. Japanese industry is now of the opinion that the kind of ease of business that we provide, that the kind of reforms that we have continuously undertaken, and the environment in which the Japanese businessmen work and operate over here is most conducive. So this is actually what gives them an edge as they look ahead. So if we are looking at Make in India, export to the world, the Japanese business is now plugged into that.
Okay, so Japan has agreed for a 10 trillion yen investment in India and infra support over the next 10 years. How significant is this agreement?
So this has got many components, as you know. The Japanese have identified 8 different sectors, some of which I had mentioned just now. And what will happen is over the course of the next few years, these will unfold into joint projects that we shall unveil. And this will put us into a scenario where we develop the capability both jointly as well as individually to complement each other. A lot of industrial production in the new sectors will not only have a higher growth rate, market capitalization, but also have a greater penetrative strength into the new markets that are emerging across the world, whether it's in Asia, Africa, or in the developed world in Europe and America. And so that will become a huge potential. In addition to that, there is another aspect of the investments, which are the soft loans, which we get the Japanese yen loans, which is going largely into the infrastructure sector. The Shinkansen instance, I would like to repeat, is a very strong example of India's commitment to high technology and quality, and the fact that sometimes you have to pay more to get the best kind of technology, because the kind of leverages that they work out in the rest of the economic system will far outweigh the additional cost that you might pay in the initial days. So I think the Japanese business is now understanding that India is a market of great hope. Also, when you look at building resilient supply chains and value chains where knowledge becomes a more important factor, India will be the way ahead.
Yes, the two countries have agreed to bring resilience in the supply of critical technology, with the AI and semiconductors a top priority. Your take on that, sir?
You know, we are already engaged with the Japanese in some of the R&D activities that are being currently undertaken in Japanese and Indian laboratories in cooperation, in the spirit of cooperation. This will provide the foundation to the kind of exchange of ideas, because at the end of the day, what we do find is that tomorrow's world will be the world of ideas where knowledge will dominate. We've already seen that knowledge has a much higher capability. Japanese are hugely plugged into our startup system, and a number of the startups that they have actually provided support to are in that specific knowledge domain. Whether it is in AI or quantum or green energy. Japan is a global leader in green hydrogen. We have got great skills in biofuels and solar, so those are some of the areas that we can exchange and have the complementarities. So I do see that this will become a huge potential as we move ahead.
Okay. Now, India and Japan are also members of the Quad. Now, in the advent of the strained India-US ties because of tariffs, what can India-Japan do together for the stability of the Indo-Pacific?
I think there was a realization quite some time back when we came up with the idea of the Indo-Pacific that there was a need for greater collaboration and working together, particularly in the maritime domain for security reasons. But what India and Japan brought to the table was to expand the understanding of the Quad from beyond the security domain towards a more holistic approach, which looks at development, which looks at stability, which looks at some of the cultural connections, and it looks at new technologies and critical components, as you also mentioned. So when we look at Quad as we go ahead, and as you know, India is scheduled to host the Quad this year. The foreign ministers have met, and the summit should take place later this year. The collaboration and the understanding between India and Japan would provide a strong foundation for bringing the other partners in so that we can have concrete outcomes at that particular event as and when it takes place. But I must also add that what it also does is provide great fillip to the Indo-Pacific initiative, of which the Quad is a very strong component. And the Indo-Pacific understanding is something that has gained momentum over time, and this particular visit will give it much greater strength.
Okay. India and Japan have also agreed for collaborating in the Chandrayaan-5 mission. There has been an MOU between ISRO and JAXA, that's Japan's Aerospace Exploration Agency. Huge potential there as well?
Yes, space has been an area in which we have collaborated, and this is an area in which we have expanded cooperation as the decades have rolled on. There was a time when we worked together on satellites. We put up some nano satellites, experimental satellites, spatial imaging. So I think we've done a lot together. We were actually neck to neck in the Chandrayaan missions of ours when the Japanese also sent a mission that landed on the moon. We sent ours, and I think there has been since then much greater collaboration on this and many others. Actually, the collaboration between ISRO and JAXA is a very wide-ranging collaboration in which you also work with some of the other, for instance, the European Space Agency as well as NASA. And so it is a very vibrant form of cooperation. But the Chandrayaan mission is actually very important, and it will provide great instruction and advice also to our big mission, which is of Gaganyaan, and also the station, the space station that we would eventually wish to set up. So that kind of collaboration is actually ongoing with various partners.
Okay. Ambassador Bhattacharya, next generation mobility partnership featured a lot in talks today. In fact, Prime Minister Shiba in his statements after the talk said that there is an immense scope of diversifying the movement of Indian students to Japan. So how critical is, that component of our bilateral partnership?
You know, this relationship between India and Japan is unique and special, as I mentioned, because it recognizes how the two can plug into each other's systems and build on the advantages and take care of the difficulties. So what we do know is that India has many people who are highly skilled and technically qualified, and at the same time, Japan is also facing a somewhat situation of declining population. And though there are advances in robotics and health that has enabled them to continue, they would definitely benefit from having young people, particularly those who are highly qualified. So some years ago, we had negotiated and agreed upon a special skilled worker arrangement, the SSW, in which there were 14 identified skill sectors that were there for which Indians would get preferential access into Japan and be able to work long-term over there. And then they could continue perhaps into other engagement. And this was a big breakthrough. So that, I think, is being extended further because we have negotiated similar mobility partner agreements with the various other countries, and Japan will be a key player in this. But particularly significant in that, in the mobility partnership, is how we nurture the young generation and new age jobs. These are not necessarily the same, but there is sometimes a connection. So one of the things that you're finding is that the kind of opportunities for Indian scholars and researchers is expanding very rapidly in the Japanese higher education system. They are also expanding, having much more of English language education. So many more Indians are interested. And Japan, of course, has very high standards of education and science and technology in particular. So there is a mutual benefit in that. The second part of that is what we are doing is looking and identifying what are the new age jobs, because the new age jobs are somewhat different from the traditional jobs of technicians and mechanics or agriculturists. And these would involve, people who are working on digital content, people who are working in the cyberspace, cybersecurity, people who are working on various aspects of the entertainment industry. And there is much greater cooperation between the two sides at the official levels to try and hone in on the skills that can actually promote these exchanges between the two sides. So we are really on a future-oriented track with Japan so far as the mobility patterns are concerned. And this is a great opportunity for Indian youth to explore these options in Japan today.
Okay, it's around 9 p.m. in the night in Japan, and we just saw the Tokyo sky tree lit up in Indian tricolors. Finally, sir, as we wind up this discussion, how far would you say that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Japan has further deepened and strengthened India-Japan relations in various fields?
I was posted in Japan about a decade and a half ago, so I have seen Japan very closely, and I was there last summer on a lecture tour. and I was able to meet with a number of academics and scholars as well as with some of the officials to get a sense. And I must say that in this decade and a half, there has been a transformational change that has come about in India-Japan relations. There is a much greater sense of trust, definitely, much greater sense of confidence, and a much greater sense of optimism about the future. The way that the two people are connected with each other, the Japanese people who visit India in very large numbers, are very deeply engaged in our culture and society, and who do very deep research into our civilization, are actually, in a sense, also the ambassadors of India when they go back to India, when they go back to Japan, and they share their experiences of what they have been through in India. So in many ways, this is a very diverse and vibrant relationship. And to see the colors on the Tokyo Tower is of the national tricolor is definitely a sight that warms the heart.
Indeed. We leave it here. Thank you very much, Ambassador Sanjay Bhattacharya, for being with us and giving us your insight on the developing and evolving India-Japan partnership. Thank you for being with us.